We continue now at the top of Daf Kuf Samech Aleph Amid Beis in Meseches Bava Basra. This is Bava Basra Daf 161b. On the previous summit, the Gemara was addressing Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba's opinion that the way that witnesses would sign on a document that was a document Mekushers, they would sign on the back, and the Gemara had said in the previous summit that they would sign perpendicular, and the signature would begin at the bottom line of where the text was, and therefore it would not be possible for a person to forge and add a line, because we know where the document ends. It ends at the point where the signatures begin on the other side. But the Gemara asked on the previous summit, why aren't we concerned? Maybe there's something that's detrimental on the last line to the person who's holding the star, and so then he'll cut off that last line, and let's say the signature was Ruvain ben Yaakov Eid, he'll cut off the name Ruvain, and he'll say ben Yaakov Eid, and that still will be considered kosher. And the Gemara said that's not a problem, because the way they would sign is they would write Ruvain ben, that would be on the last line, and then it would say Yaakov Eid on the next line already, and so if you cut off just that last line, you'd be cutting off the Ruvain ben, and Yaakov Eid would not be kosher. But the Gemara says that's not true. Yaakov Eid can be a kosher signature, and the Gemara now is in the middle of answering that's not a problem though, because we happen to know Lav di Yaakov, who we happen to know that this signature does not belong to Yaakov, and therefore that is not a concern. And the Rashbam says, Lav di Yaakov ein bazeh hamalchus shum adam. In this government, in this kingdom, there's nobody in this land, sheshmo Yaakov, whose name is Yaakov, sheyichtov kach, who signs in that fashion, and that's why that's not a concern. But the Gemara says it still should be a concern. V'dilma b'shmei di'avu chasam. Maybe he's using his father's name, and he's signing with his father's name. And the Rashbam says, V'dilma b'shmei di'avu Yaakov chasam Ruvain. What happened was, with the name of his father, Ruvain signed the name Yaakov, which is his father's name. And the Rashbam says, V'chein minhago lachsom l'chavadov, if maybe this is his minhag, that he signs this way as out of a way of respect for his father. And so again, maybe it should be a concern that he's writing Yaakov Eid, and even though we know that's not his signature, we know there's no one named Yaakov with his signature, but again, maybe this is Ruvain signing using his father's name. And the Gemara says to that, Lo shavik inish shmei didei, a person does not abandon his own name, v'chasim b'shmei di'avu, and then sign using his father's name. That never happens, so that's not a concern. But the Gemara still says, V'dilma simona bi'alma hu deshavia, but maybe he's making his father's name like a simon. It's possible to sign with some kind of a picture, some kind of an indication. You don't have to actually sign with your name, so still we should be concerned. Again, he's going to cut off the last line. It will just say Yaakov Eid, and maybe that's a simon that Ruvain uses as a signature. To Harav Tzayer Kavara, because Rav, he used to sign by drawing a picture of a fish. And Reb Chanina Tzayer Charusa, Reb Chanina, he used to sign by drawing a picture of a palm branch. Rav Chisda Samech, Rav Chisda used the letter Samech to sign. Rav Hoshia Ayin, Rav Hoshia would sign with the letter Ayin. Rava bar Rav Huna Machusen, Rava bar Rav Huna, he would have a picture of a ship's mast, that would be his signature. And so that's maybe what this person is doing over here. And the Gemara says to that, that's not a concern either. Lo chotze finish l'shavi l'shmei di'avu simona, because a person doesn't have so much chutzpah to render the name of his father as his simon. No one would do that, and therefore that is not a concern. And the Gemara continues with another answer on behalf of Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba. Mar Zutra Amar Mar Zutra says, Lama loch kuli hai, why do you have to go to such lengths to answer this question? There's a simple answer of why we're not concerned that a person is going to cut off that last line, because kol mekusher shein eidav kolin b'shita achas pasel. Anytime you have a star that's mekusher, if the witnesses don't finish at the same line, that's going to be pasel. That will be disqualified, meaning to say both witnesses actually start their signature from the same place. They started from the bottom line, so if you're going to cut off that bottom line, you're not just cutting off the name on one of the signatures, you're cutting off both of them, and it would be apparent that this would be a forgery. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Yitzchak bar Yosef, Amar Rav Yochanan. Rav Yitzchak bar Yosef says that Rav Yochanan says, Kol ha-mechak kulan, any erasures that happen in a document, tzarech sheyichtov, the scribe, the sofer, has to write at the end of the document, v'dein kiyumehen, and this is their verification, meaning to say he has to list all of the erasures at the end of the document to say what was erased and what was placed there. And also, v'tzarech sheyachzer meinyano shel shtar b'shita achrona, also the last line of a document always has to summarize the general content of the document. And the Gemara says, my time, and what's the reason for this? And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Kuf Samech Beis Amid Aleph.